Alright, what's up guys, PeterJaguars here again. Welcome to our 2019 NFL Playoff Bracket prediction. The road to Super Bowl 53 in Atlanta is on. 12 teams remaining, and we're going to be going through every single game, including picking our Super Bowl champion leading up to this one. A lot of fun stuff here. This is now our 5th year predicting the entire bracket for YouTube. I don't know anyone else who's been doing it for quite as long. And a friendly reminder to roll it back to 2017 when we got the entire bracket correctly. I'll have links to all of the old ones in the description if you want to see what I got right, what I got wrong, and maybe find some trends that could give you insight for where we're looking in the right direction for this one. But without further ado, 11 games to pick, a champion to crown, so let's hop into it. We start off here in the upper left corner of the bracket, two AFC South teams. Indianapolis traveling to Houston. Obviously, it's tough as a Jags fan seeing both these teams in here, but I am very familiar with both of them. They're familiar with each other, playing 2 times this year, split those games. Each team won on the road. And I'm actually going to pick one more road winner right here. Indianapolis to go into Houston, and Andrew Luck to link up with T.Y. Hilton, Eric Ebron. They might not get much going on the ground, but just to play a very solid game and what very well could be a shootout and edge this one out close. Pete Carroll, and for that matter, I suppose Russell Wilson as well, deserve a lot of credit for what Seattle has done this year. A team that really at the start of the season did not look like they had a complete roster in any capacity, and all of a sudden they have, snuck into the playoffs as the top wild card in the NFC. They traveled to Dallas here, and both teams played very similar styles, wanting to pound the rock, slow it down, and have efficient quarterback play in the end. I think between these two, Russell Wilson gets my edge over Dak Prescott, and this one is also able to pull off the road upset to bring the Seahawks on to the divisional round. The wildcard matchup that I have spent the most time with is this Ravens-Chargers game. The AFC, tough to figure out in some sense. I actually flipped from Houston to Indy late in the week, but here I haven't picked a winner until now, and it's tough because the Chargers are a 12-4 wildcard team. You don't see that a lot. They went 7-1 on the road, and they're going to need to travel into Baltimore for this one. Lamar Jackson is another quarterback making his first playoff start, but really it's the defense that drives the Baltimore team. These guys played 2 weeks ago, and they were able to get to the victory over Los Angeles, but after a deep bomb to Max Williams, didn't have much going on offense. The Chargers were pretty good controlling that ground game. I think the familiarity helps, and I'm going to expect Phillip Rivers to come in, and a third road team wins to take this one on. I suppose now would be a good time for a reminder on how the bracket works, since there are always a couple comments about that. The NFL playoff bracket is not linear. The 1 seed is going to always play the lowest seed remaining, so if the 6 upsets the 3, they head there. That's why I have the Colts heading over to Kansas City. The way I have this set up probably is going to give you an indication of what I'm thinking for this Bears-Eagles game, but with 3 upsets already, it would be tough to pick 4 for 4 on them. I think this game could be a little bit closer than some people expect, but I am big on Chicago, especially if Eddie Jackson is available for this contest. Their defense is fantastic. In fact, Philly would not be in the playoffs if the Bears hadn't done their job to beat Minnesota in a meaningless game and give the Eagles a chance to go through. So Super Bowl champs will try to come into Chicago, but it's their first playoff game in quite a while. They'll be amped up, and heaviest favorite of the first round, the one favorite that I am taking to move on. On to the divisional round. You may remember the Colts and the Chiefs played in the playoffs just a few years ago. Andrew Luck led a 28-point comeback to win that one for Indianapolis, 45-44 in the end. You have to think it's a little bit different this time. The Chiefs are at Arrowhead, home field advantage for as long as they can last in the AFC, and with Pat Mahomes at the helm, this is a much different Kansas City roster to really try to come in through and fight this AFC gauntlet. I am going to swing back the other way and tell you with an extra week of prep, Andy Reid has always been fantastic. If you've been following football, you know the stats on how he does coming off a bye. It's no different in the playoffs with the extra preparation, and I'm going to say that they are a more high-flying offense to move on and take the victory here. Phillip Rivers is 0-4 all-time in Foxborough, but this is a matchup that I would really like to see come to fruition. It could happen the way I've lined it up in the Divisional Round, also possible in the AFC Championship game. And the funny thing here is the Pats finished 11-5 this year. That is the same record that they wound up with when Matt Castle had to play most of the season in 2008, and they missed the playoffs in that campaign. They earned the bye week here, and you can argue that it's undeserved. Whether it is or not doesn't really matter. The Chargers would have to go play them on the road. The Pats get the extra week of rest, and just sort of the intangibles factoring into that, it makes me just give them a bit of an edge in what would otherwise be a 50-50 game, though I could see the Chargers very well, if this game happens, coming in and pulling off that upset. For as much as I praised Seattle earlier, going into the Superdome and winning in the playoffs is a very tough task. When the Saints had home field advantage, they won the Super Bowl. They've got it again this year. And whether it is Seattle or Dallas or Philadelphia that needs to make this trip in the divisional round, it's going to be an uphill battle for them to quiet down this crowd, take control of the game, and find the winning formula. It does exist, but I just don't see it happening, and this will be the end of the road for the Seahawks with the Saints powering ahead. There was a time where the Rams were clear favorites to win Super Bowl 53. Alas, that time has passed, and while I do think Sean McVay is going to be involved in the hoisting of a Lombardi Trophy at some point during his coaching career, they've got a tough road ahead of them for 2019. The venue would be flipped from when these teams played earlier in the year, so the weather a bit more forgiving in Los Angeles than it was in Chicago, but the defense can certainly travel, and I mentioned Eddie Jackson earlier, but Prince Amukamara, Kyle Fuller, guys who have been really solid on the outside for the Bears, and with their front seven so good, it does make it tough for Gurley to get much going on the ground. That puts the pressure on Jared Goff. He threw 4 interceptions when these teams played the first time. McVay would have to get that game plan settled for Goff, and he's really been rattled under pressure a few times this season, and that's kind of what led to the Rams losing a few games and staggering near the end of the year. I think they'll get there at some point, but I'm not sure that's right now. And the Bears, with their strong defense, able to come in, pull off the upset, and earn their way into the NFC Championship game. Patriots Chiefs for a spot in the Super Bowl. I guarantee both teams have been thinking about a potential rematch since they faced off back in October, totaling 946 yards of offense and 83 points. And while we very well could see metrics like that through the roof once again, a few things would be different if these teams are at each other's throats again in January. One, you get the location swap, and that cannot go understated here. I was at the AFC Championship game last year. There is a big advantage to playing in Foxborough. In fact, the Pats had no penalties called on them when these teams played earlier in the year. I don't think that happens in Arrowhead. And really just the atmosphere being at home. The Chiefs won a Super Bowl back in 1970, but in terms of the modern era, this is as good as they've been. They get the number 1 seed. You know they're going to be going crazy there, and certainly a big bonus. Eric Berry also should be okay. He had a slight setback, but has returned to playing, and obviously is an all-pro when he's healthy. Josh Gordon is lost from New England, so that takes away a potential weapon, and so that combination makes me think that the Chiefs have a better chance, at the very least, to stifle New England's offense. Really, this is one of those games that can still wind up as a team that possesses the ball last wins, but I don't expect Kansas City to be chasing the way they did earlier in the year. That's how the Pats were able to kill clock and kick a game-winning field goal, and really, they've just got something going here in Kansas City. Sometimes it's intangible, but you see what's happening with Mahomes and Kelsey and Tyreek Hill and everything. They'll be able to light up the scoreboard and find their way into Super Bowl 53. Over in the NFC, we have Bears Saints. These teams did not play in the 2018 season. They did in 2017, but we can't really draw conclusions from that game for a few reasons. 1, John Fox. 2, John Fox. 3, John Fox. And 4, the Bears' leading wide receiver in that game was Trey McBride. Nobody else had more than 23 receiving yards. So we'll scrap that one, tell you these teams are playing anew, because that's what it is. And really the two formulas, if you want to come into New Orleans and beat them, are going to be go for the shootout and hope that you can score more points, which is what the Bucs somehow did against them in week 1 with Ryan Fitzpatrick. Or 2, you can control the game, try to establish possession, play good defense, defense, limit their weapons, and, maybe squeak out a 17-14 or something of that nature. The Bears would probably err towards taking the latter approach, maybe throwing in a trick play or two to make that happen. And obviously, if the Rams are here, I expect them to go towards more of a shootout. But New Orleans is such a complete team, even if their defense isn't amazing, for how good their offense is. They've obviously had a handful of games this year where they have slaughtered opposition, and there really are a lot of similarities from what they were when they won the Super Bowl. I think here that Chicago is a team on the rise, but maybe just not quite there yet. And so with that in mind, you take the experience of Drew Brees, the combo of Ingram and Kamara to pound the ball on the ground to wind out a victory, and put New Orleans in to face Kansas City. For all the talk about home field advantage, which I suppose I've discarded to some extent when I picked 3 upsets in the first round, which probably won't happen in the end, you get to the Super Bowl, and it is just straight up hard-nosed, smash-mouth football. This one's in Atlanta, so maybe you give New Orleans a slight bonus there from divisional familiarity with the travels, but both of these teams have awesome fan bases. They were 1 seeds for a reason. I put them here for a reason, and what could be the difference very well is a marginal injury here or an unlucky fumble there that turns out crowning one of these teams the champion. They are, in my mind, that close. You give the edge and experience to New Orleans. They've been there before, but something about Patrick Mahomes tells me that this kid is not going to be flustered by the spotlight. He's played in some big primetime games. He knows how to handle himself, and really with the weapons and everything that the Chiefs have going there, I think their defense is a little bit healthier, going to be able to do just enough that in this one, it's a shootout, it's a ball game, and I'm going to give the nod to the Kansas City Chiefs to take Super Bowl 53. He's going to be the regular season MVP whenever it is announced, and of course I have to take Patrick Mahomes as the Super Bowl MVP as well. So that is going to be it for the picks and this video. Thank you for tuning in to the playoff predictions. Appreciate it as always. Spike a like if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe, because at the very least I'll be back here picking this again in 2020. Let me know in the comments section what teams you think are going to play for the Super Bowl and who is going to come out as the champion. If your team is in the playoffs, good luck to them. Enjoy the games. And anyhow, I'm out. Peace.